Today, Mr. Alexander Hamilton, Mr. John Jay, Mr. Robert Yates, and Mr. John Lansing Jr. will be arguing about what kind of federal government we should have. Mr. Hamilton and later John Jay, he's stuck in traffic, are in favor of adopting the new Constitution with a strong federal government. Mr. Lansing Jr. and Mr. Yates would like things to stay the way they are. Without further ado, here's some New York delegates.
Good morning, men. My fellow representatives from New York, Mr. Yates and Mr. Lansing, seem to believe that if we ratify the new Constitution, all liberty will be lost. However, they care too much about their own power to see how our country will benefit from this new Constitution.
I beg to differ. Instituting this new Constitution will not, as you say, benefit our country. On the contrary, it will sever us from the one thing that we fought long and hard to obtain. Freedom!
Allow me to intervene. Alexander Hamilton's proposed federal government will likely end with a despot. Has anyone in history ever stepped down from power willingly? No, not one. And all too many despots were evil. Ivan the Terrible, Genghis Khan, Attila the Hun, all of whom were controlling evil people who did not allow their nations to be free. These kinds of people will plague this new Constitution.
Mr. Lansing, our home state of New York has too much power. Whenever other people from other states come through a trade, they have to pay high taxes. We need to be able to regulate the economy from our capital.
No, we do not. What you are saying is that one person should have control over all the taxes for our states. He could make half of our income go to himself if he wanted.
I'm saying that multiple elected officials who should be acting in our best interest will control what our taxes are.
And how exactly do we know that they'll be acting in our best interest? And don't say that state governments can be corrupt as well. Mr. Lansing and I know. Mr. Lansing and I also know that if a state government becomes corrupt, it is much easier to fix, because a state government would have much less power individually than a federal government.
Also, Mr. Hamilton, your argument is a bit hypocritical. You're telling me that I have too much power and that we should put my power and put it in your hands?
Mr. Yates, who will fix a corrupt state government? A non-existent federal one? Mr. Lansing, I'm taking your power and spreading it amongst multiple men.
Other state governments will fix a corrupt state.
Men, fellow delegates, do you want men from another state to come in and tell you how to fix your problems? Say it loud. That's what I thought.
If necessary, I would accept a helping hand from other states.
Agreed.
We will see what happens when another state offers us help. The federal government needs to be able to affect its citizens directly. We need to be able to provide for our citizens. We cannot do that if our central power is puny.
I quit! Hi, John Jay here. What did I miss? Quit again. Oh my gosh, he's so annoying. Anyways. Oh, hey, remember that time when I went to Spain and would have made good relations if a trade deal passed? It got shot down by much less than majority. We need a new government that rules by 7 out of 13 majority, not by 9 out of 13.
Well, what works for one half of the country might not work for the other half.
Our Congress is horrendously inefficient. How do you expect us to get anything done with the 2/3 majority? Nothing has been accomplished in the past 7 years.
We need to make sure that everyone's interests align.
If everyone's interests had to be aligned, nothing would happen. We need to be able to govern. We're going to have to make some people unhappy along the way.
Mr. Yates, if we wanted everyone to be perfectly happy, nothing would ever happen.
I am saying that we should try to get as many people as we can happy. That means more than half.
7 is more than half!
We are the United States of America. In order to be united, we need a strong federal government. The federal government needs to be able to regulate the economy. New York should not be allowed to tax the other states for wanting to trade.
United under whom? A dictator?
No!
We will limit his power.
There will be ways to control him. We need to be efficient. A 2/3 majority is not efficient. We need a smaller majority in our Congress.
No. We need to think of the individual people. As many as we can, not just half of them.
We will now accept questions from our fellow delegates.
Now, why 7 out of 13? Why not 9 out of 13? It could possibly be that you say 9 is too hard, like most of the colonies will not agree with it. Why? But why 7?
7 is just over half. What's your name?
No. Washington, General Washington.
Thank you. Now I also thank you for letting me show off my beautiful voice stuff. And you guys were very, very passionate, and I found that really brought up the debate. And my question is, why do you think the other states will come and help if they're independent? If they're independent, they should just be looking out for their own needs.
Well,
Can you answer facing us, please?
They're all united. They're all under a small federal government. Even though it's basically non-existent, it's still kind of there.
Officially there.
Well, like, as if we went for the anti-federalist point of view. Let's say we had the anti-federalist point of view. What do you think that each state would actually come and help out another corrupt state?
Well, I'm
Yeah.
But the
Yes.
anti-federalist answer.
I'm wearing this hat.
You see, the thing is, even if a state is caring about itself, they'll still want to try to help the other states because the corruption of one state will influence another, and then will just cause a chain reaction. So the other states will try to stop that before it happens.
Well, why not just wipe out that state all by itself?
Because then,
It's a part of our union.
yeah,
But what
Exactly.
union if we're going for the anti-federalist?
we're still united. We're just also separate. We're still united. We're just also separate because we don't want to be We don't want to be controlled. We still want to have borders, but those borders still can be crossed. We're still one whole country.
If we were still separate, I really wouldn't care as much what's going on in Virginia or New Jersey or one of the other 12 states as if we were united. Any other questions?
And Max.
So,
What's your name?
Albert Rates.
Robert Yates. What's
No, I'm Robert Yates.
So going by the anti-federalist point of view, is it legal for one state to wage war against another in another land?
It is not legal. In fact, the one law that I think held the states together minorly, that hold the states together minorly, is that in time of war, one state would have to send, the states would have to send the one state in war soldiers, weapons, and such.
What's your name? George Clinton.
So you guys talked about having a president, and also I was wondering if there might be a possibility that there would be state executives also, that other people can be governed within the states.
Well, there will be state executives because the federal government will still leave small state governments. It's almost as if they will have reversed roles in terms of power. So yes, there will be state executives.
How would that be different than the president?
They would just control this one state.
Instead of the
There would-
entire nation.
It's as if we would have multiple presidents, each one in charge of a specific state.
Why would we need a president for both states and all together?
See, that's the thing. In the articles, during the times of the Articles of Confederation, there was no president. In the basically non-existent federal government, it was just a Congress and a tiny.
last delegate question.
Any more delegates?
What's your name?
Mr. Clinton's sister.
You said you need to make everyone's interests align. How do you plan on making that?
Well, I think that we should be keeping this the 9 out of the 2/3 majority, the 9 out of 13 majority, because if like say the northern half of the country decides, oh yeah, this is a great idea, that'll really help me, but the other half, but it'll hurt the other half of the country, and the law still gets passed, half of our country will be in a very bad state, in a very bad condition.
I would like to point out, if a state is in a bad condition, it will have the federal government to support it.
Excellent job. Thank you so much. Before we open it up to the audience, can you please go ahead and share your artwork?
So, it's plates. And
Actually, before
The
you...
assignment was,
Yes, thank you.
we had to make in our class we had to make an abstract representation of our topic. So what we did,
plates, and the small plates represent
The states.
the
There are 13
anti-federalist
of them.
side, 13 small governments, and defensive
and then
governments,
we have one large plate.
which represents our federal government.
And it's all the colors mixed together.
I
Or at least we tried to make them.
mix all of these colors together.
It didn't really go so well.
Thank you. Go ahead and pass that around. And now we can go ahead and, the present day, you please feel free to ask them, audience, parents are encouraged, any questions at all about their presentation or their topic or even current day topics that are happening today.
Okay, no.
What do you guys think about this number? Do you think that these places are kind of thinking of
Well, honestly, I
didn't hear the question. I didn't hear the question.
how do they think that these debates influence the country?
How do we think that these debates influence the country today? So, well, I think they influenced it, especially because, well, we do have a really strong federal government. Our president is one of the most powerful men, if not the most powerful man in the world. So we do have a pretty powerful federal government.
But we also have the Bill of Rights, which came from the anti-federalist point of view.
The 10th Amendment to the Bill of Rights, the final amendment, states that all powers not specifically delegated to the federal government, the states are in charge of. That today that affects highways or education or.
So it ended up being sort of a compromise in a way.
First of all, this was one of the most engaging and also like rigorously researched presentations I've really ever seen. We were just so impressed. So my question is, so obviously from our perspective today, we know that mostly the Federalists won, even given that the Bill of Rights is like a little bit of a compromise. We obviously don't have the Articles of Confederation, we have a federal government. So it's kind of easy from my point of view today to look back and be like, oh, it's obvious the Federalists are always going to win because that's what we have today. My question is, at the time the debates happened, do you think that it was like so obvious to them that the Federalist side was going to win out, or at the time was it like really neck and neck, like nobody knew who was going to win out? You can all answer.
At the time, the Federalists were more of the minority.
Yeah, there were
they
there were 3 Federalists. There were John Jay, Alexander Hamilton, and James Madison. And that was pretty much it. And then everyone else was anti-federalist.
So what tipped the balance?
Honestly, I don't know.
That's the next research.
Right.
Further research.
Anna?
What mechanisms do the Federalists, or did the Federalists propose to make sure that the rights of folks in the states remain protected prior to the Bill of Rights?
Well, we do still have a state government, so that's
It's not like
they succeeded in doing it. I'm not quite sure what they actually did, but what they
Well,
did
let me
do-
ask it differently. What were the mechanisms that prevented